Two names, one comparison, or really two. Apis mellifera ligustica, the Italian honeybee, is a genuine subspecies of the Italian peninsula, part of the C evolutionary lineage. Russian bee means two entirely different things. The USDA ARS Primorsky stock, a genetically admixed, mite-adapted population imported from Russia's Pacific coast in 1997, and the central Russian dark forest bee, Apis mellifera mellifera, a true M lineage subspecies, whose divergence from the Italian bee predates human agriculture by hundreds of thousands of generations. Three findings dominate. First, the genetic distance is real and deep, a pairwise FST of 0.383 between Italian and Central Russian bees versus 0.153 between Italian and Carniolan. Second, the functional gap is about parasite resistance, not honey. Varroa populations grew 1.4-fold in Russian colonies versus 18.9-fold in Italian colonies over 19 weeks. Third, the management divergence flows from one behavioral trait. Russian bees tie brood rearing to forage availability. Italians don't, and that single difference changes everything. Start with the first Russian bee, the Primorsky stock, named for Primorsky Krai, Russia's far east near Vladivostok. Here's the twist. That region has no native western honeybee. Its native bee is Apis cerana, the original host of the varroa mite. Western honeybees arrived with settlers in the late 1800s. When varroa jumped from cerana onto them, genetic evidence points to a Korea haplotype switch around 1952 and a Japan-Thailand switch around 1957 to 1963. The population underwent decades of unmanaged natural selection under mite pressure. Varroa did not reach mainland America until 1987, so U.S. commercial stock had essentially zero selection history when the mite arrived. In June 1997, USDA ARS collected 100 Primorsky queens from 16 beekeepers, representing 57 queen mothers. They arrived at a quarantine station on Grande Terre Island, Louisiana, on the 1st of July. The second Russian bee, the Central Russian dark bee, Apis mellifera mellifera, is a different animal entirely, a native of European Russia, shaped by 6 to 8 month winters. The genetics run deep. Apis mellifera splits into deep evolutionary lineages. The deepest European split separates the M lineage, the dark bees, from the ancestor of the C and O lineages, roughly 900,000 generations ago. The Italian bee and the Central Russian bee are about as distantly related as two European honeybees can be. The Alps were the historical barrier between them. Mitochondrial markers tell the same story. C lineage haplotypes C1 and C2 dominate in Italy and the United States. A survey of 1,063 colonies across 45 states found C lineage in 93.8% of samples, while Siberian dark bees carry M lineage variants called PQQ and PQQQ, with 99% sequence identity to dark bee sequences from the Netherlands, Britain, and Ireland. And here's the irony. The Italian bee the world exports is partly a sampling artifact. Across most of the peninsula, Ligustica is a composite of M and C mitochondrial lineages. The C-only profile reflects the queen breeding regions where M lineage happens to be absent. Now the Primorsky problem. By 2019, 67% of Russian samples were misclassified as Italian under the original certification assay, and nucleotide diversity in Russian stock sits squarely within the range of commercial Italian lines. The U.S. supply chain is nearly panmictic. Russian as a commercial category is a management claim more than a genetic one. And one caution for breeders, at the varroa-sensitive hygiene locus, the marker-phenotype association is reversed between stocks. An allele linked to hygienic behavior in Italian bees predicts decreased brood removal in Russians. Marker-assisted selection across backgrounds selects the wrong allele. The field trials are where the difference turns stark. In the Baton Rouge package colony trials across 3 seasons, varroa populations in Russian colonies grew 1.4-fold over 19 weeks in 2003, versus 18.9-fold in Italian colonies. At week 19, roughly 366 mites per Russian colony against nearly 3,000 per Italian. In 2001, 6 of 11 Italian colonies were lost, 1 of 10 Russian. The resistance is not one trait, but the sum of several. Hygienic removal of infested brood, over 95% of freeze-killed brood removed within 48 hours. Mite non-reproduction. At least 30% of mites in Russian brood never reproduced. And a longer phoretic phase, keeping more mites on adult bees exposed to grooming. The tracheal mite result is even more lopsided. Domestic prevalence rose to a mean of 17.5%, one colony peaking at 93%. Primorsky prevalence stayed at 0. 15 of 22 domestic colonies died. 0 Primorsky colonies died. And requeening transmits the trait. infested colonies fell to near zero within 91 days of receiving Russian queens. Yet honey production shows no clear winner. In 2011, unselected control colonies out-yielded Russian stock, 162 pounds to 127. The Russian economic case rests on avoided treatments and avoided losses, not outproducing Italians. And under climate-controlled cold storage, the historical Russian wintering advantage largely vanishes. Survival and almond rental performance match unselected stock. Managing Russian stock means unlearning Italian habits in 5 specific ways. 1. Queen cells are not an emergency. Russian colonies keep just-in-case cells on the comb most of the time. Only cells on the bottom of frames signal swarming. 2. Feeding schedules invert. Russian queens curtail laying when pollen is scarce and resume explosively when flow starts. Committed Russian operators feed no syrup outside queen rearing. 3. Swarm control means splitting, not cell cutting. Move the old queen with 2 brood frames into a nuke, relocate it miles away, let the parent requeen itself. 4. Cross-stock requeening needs a double screen split. The new Russian queen above, released after a week, laying for a month before the old queen is removed. 5. Never mix stocks in one yard. Drone drift at 300 meters and robbing at 1.5 kilometers make any cluster of hives one genetic and epidemiological unit. The certification economy stays small. The Russian Honeybee Breeders Association certifies breeders, not queens, on a DNA ancestry score above 0.5, roughly 90 queens selected per year. Meanwhile, almond contracts demand an 8-frame colony average in February, structurally hostile to a bee that shuts down brood rearing in winter dearth. The Italian bee's condition-independent rearing is precisely the trait almond contracts pay for. The two national industries mirror the two biologies. Russia holds about 2.5 million colonies, 93% in household operations, producing over 60,000 tons of honey a year. A 2020 federal law, 490 FZ, governs beekeeping as agriculture. And Russia keeps a practice with no Italian analog. Bortnichestvo, tree hollow beekeeping. The Shulgan Tash Reserve in Bashkortostan, founded in 1958, was the first reserve in the world established to protect a native wild bee. It maintains 138 colonies in carved tree hollows and log hives. Berzian Bortovoy honey scores 21 to 30 on the diastase test, against a ghost minimum of 7. UNESCO status is often garbled. The reserve joined the Man in Biosphere program in 2012. Bortovoy beekeeping has sat on the tentative cultural list since 2019, and in July 2025, UNESCO inscribed the Paleolithic rock paintings of Kapova Cave, not the beekeeping. A FAO heritage designation is pending for 2026. Italy's 2025 season produced nearly 31,000 tons of honey from 1.55 million hives across 78,000 registered beekeepers. Numbers up 82% since 2016. Italian apiculture runs a long multi-bloom calendar, acacia, citrus, sula, linden, chestnut, eucalyptus, that rewards continuously populous colonies. And Italy protects Ligustica by law, just as Bashkortostan bans imported stock, the same conservation instinct from opposite directions. The climate logic converges across all 3 literatures. Russian and Primorsky stocks suit northern cold continental climates with a short, intense flow. The dearth-triggered brood shutdown avoids wasting stores, and the explosive buildup captures a compressed season. Italian stock suits long, warm seasons with steady, extended flow, and any operation where standing colony population is the product being sold. 3 caveats deserve weight. First, the genetic distinctness that justifies the Russian premium is eroding in real time. Open-mated F1 daughters retain only partial resistance, and much of what is sold as Russian is genetically closer to Italian than the label implies. Second, the trait is not portable by marker-assisted selection across genetic backgrounds. Third, management, not genetics, decides whether the resistance is realized. Mixed apiaries, unmarked queens, and Italian-style cell destruction all dissipate the advantage. The deeper point, these are 2 theories of what a colony is for. Italian apiculture treats the colony as a continuously productive unit moved to forage. Russian apiculture treats it as an organism allowed to contract and expand with the season. Survival, not throughput, as the target. The Bortnik harvesting from a carved tree and the Baton Rouge breeder refusing to feed syrup are running the same program. The record is blunt about what it does not support. No genomic study quantifies the Primorsky founding ancestry. No sting count assay exists. No measure of propolis production. No published overwintering survival percentage for the Central Russian bee. The honest conclusion: choose Italian for long warm seasons and pollination contracts. Choose Russian for short intense flows and miticide reduction. And know that the label is only the beginning. What you manage is what you get.